I am an at-large member now for Mayfair Neighbors Incorporated, one of the local RNOs within the East Area Plan. I am also the chairman of the East Area Plan Steering Committee. Over 18 months ago, many of us were appointed by our city council members, Mary Beth Sussman, Chris Herndon, to get together and meet and try to develop plans or gather feedback or quite a few things just to try to represent the East Area. It's really good to see the number of people that we have here tonight, and I hope that you or your friends and neighbors can attend some of the future meetings tomorrow night, and then a couple next week, and then the last one on March 6th. I welcome everybody. Please go to denvergov.org. Stay up to date. Put the /East Plan or East Area at the end. Make sure that you stay up to date. And let's all have an open mind and let's participate. And we're going to get a lot of opportunity to deliver feedback tonight. And again, thank you for joining us. And I'll hand it over to JJ.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, my name is JJ Folsom. I am the project manager for the consultant team on the East Area Plan. We have we've been hired by the city. We have a large consultant team and city staff team that you'll get to meet in a few minutes. My co-manager here is Beth Vogelsang, and you'll get to hear from her in a little bit. Before we start, I'd like to get a show of hands, since tonight we're focusing on the entire East Area. So we're actually talking about 4 neighborhoods, and as Merritt mentioned, over the next week we're going to meet with individual neighborhoods, and I'll show you that schedule in a few minutes. I'd like to get a show of hands. How many people live in the Hale neighborhood here? A couple people, great, thank you. How about Montclair? Great, another even more. And East Colfax neighborhood, anybody? All right, good, we're getting well represented. And then South Park Hill. So great, so majority South Park Hill, but we have representation from everybody. That's excellent. So again, I am the consultant. I work for a firm called PUMA, Progressive Urban Management Associates. We are an economic development and planning firm. We've worked all over the United States on land use plans and neighborhood plans just like this, and corridor plans. And our team members have many years of experience. We are based in Denver, only in Denver. We're actually in the East Central study area. We're on Colfax. So most of our team members, about 2/3 of our team members live in these neighborhoods in the study area. So we feel like that's very important that we are, not only are we planning consultants, but we're also planning for the future and working with recommendations that will impact us as residents. So tonight I'm going to briefly talk about the neighborhood process, this planning process, talk real quickly about the schedule, and then a brief overview of what we've heard to date, and that's going to be really brief because there's a lot of statistics and information that has been provided by people that have filled out surveys or have gone to other meetings, and then around the room you'll be able to get even more detail on that. At these breakout stations, we want to hear from you what your opinions are on the guiding principles and vision, responding to some ideas that we're bringing. We're not just asking you, what do you want to see? We actually have ideas that we want you to respond to, as well as new ideas. Some of the stations have mapping and priority exercises. The leaders of each station will talk at the end of this to tell you exactly what they're doing. As Merritt mentioned, we have an interactive web version of this meeting, so if you don't get enough time to go to all the stations or you just get worn out, there's a lot of information, I realize that, to see here. We encourage you to go to denvergov.org/EastPlan, and all of these boards and exercises will be available online for the next 2 weeks. So what is the Neighborhood Planning Initiative? This is an initiative taken on by the city to prepare neighborhood plans for all 78 neighborhoods in the city. Traditionally, neighborhood plans have been prepared one neighborhood at a time, and that would take 78 years if we did that individually. So many neighborhoods don't even have a neighborhood plan. So some stats here for those in the back, I'll read it. 42% of the city, the black color here, don't have neighborhood plans at all. And then the dark purple, 20% of the city have plans adopted after Blueprint Denver in 2002, so 16 years old. And then the pinkish area is another 40% of neighborhoods have plans before Blueprint Denver. So, plans over 18 to 20 years old. The particular neighborhoods we're talking about here, the East Montclair and East Colfax was a combined neighborhood plan. That was from 1994, so pretty outdated. Park Hill, a little more recent, but still 19-year-old plan. And then Hale has no plan at all. So this process allows for the city of Denver to actually prepare neighborhood plans for all 78 neighborhoods in the city in about a 10 to 15 year period versus a 70-year period. And these neighborhood plans typically last about 15 to 20 years, so they're a long-term vision. So the plan area boundaries for the east area, as I mentioned, the 4 neighborhoods. The northern boundary is roughly 23rd Avenue, Colorado Boulevard to the west, generally 6th Avenue to the south until we get to the edge of Montclair and East Colfax, then it runs up Quebec and down 11th and onto the city limits at Yosemite. So how does the Neighborhood Planning Initiative relate to Denverite? So Denverite is citywide plans that are concurrently going on. There are many drafts of these. The comprehensive plan, Blueprint Denver, which is the land use plan, game plan is the parks plan, and then Denver Moves is a transportation plan. So these are citywide plans that set broad policies citywide. So then the area plans that we're working on here go to a neighborhood level that are much more detailed. So these plans will be consistent with the vision of the Denverite plans, but then they address topics and go into much more detail, as you'll see when you go into these breakouts. So the schedule, as I mentioned, we are, Merritt talked about us, the steering committee has been at it with the city, been working together hand in hand for the last year and a half or so. And then the consultant team came on board in October, and we've been getting up to speed and reviewing everything that the city has prepared, and the steering committee. We've been attending and presenting at steering committee meetings. And then last month we actually had a meeting here with Park Hill Specific, and then over the last, or then this month we're just kicking off. This is the first night of the East Area meetings. We'll have 4 meetings after this, neighborhood workshops, and then after these workshops in March and April, we'll synthesize all this information that we've heard and start preparing recommendations with the city and the consultant team and prepare draft plans to, it will come back here, not necessarily this location, but we'll come back to the East area in May for an open house to describe and present the recommendations, and then make revisions after that with a final or a draft plan in June. And then in June, that plan will go into the city process, the adoption process through planning board and through city council, and so there'll be plenty of opportunities throughout that for public input as well. One thing I also want to mention is that we're doing a fair amount in the East Area Plan of targeted outreach, to reach out to communities that don't necessarily come to public meetings. So we're meeting with ethnic groups in the East neighborhood, East Colfax neighborhood, excuse me, refugee communities, and just people that can't always get to a meeting. So we've actually have a team of folks that we go to apartment complexes, we go to cafes. We were at the Regal Cafe last weekend, and actually meeting with some of these communities, underrepresented communities that don't always go to these types of meetings. The upcoming workshops I mentioned, so Hale neighborhoods, actually tomorrow night at Friendship Baptist Church, 6 to 8 p.m. Next week we'll be right back in this room for those of you that raised your hand as South Park Hill residents. We'll be here from 6 to 8 on next Tuesday. And then the next Thursday we'll be meeting with the Montclair neighborhood back at Friendship Baptist Church. And then finally on Tuesday, March 5th, we'll be meeting with the East Colfax neighborhood at Ashley Elementary. These, you don't necessarily, if you don't live in these neighborhoods, doesn't mean you can't go. You'll be hearing a lot of the same if you do go. We'll have new information for those of you that raised your hands from Park Hill. We'll have some new information to respond to at the neighborhood specific meeting next week. So what have we heard so far? So through the last year and a half of outreach events and through the survey, there's been over a dozen or so events that the city has tagged along with on some of those Denverite projects that were mentioned. And through the online survey, many questions were asked about what people liked and disliked or had ideas about in these neighborhoods. Almost 1,500 participants and roughly 6,000 comments were documented on this map. You see, so the dark reddish color are things that people dislike. The bluish color are ideas, and then the yellow-greenish color are things that people liked in neighborhoods. And I'm going to walk you through a few statistics of some answers to some of these questions. Of the likes, 36% of respondents said local businesses are what they like most in the East Area neighborhoods. And the numbers are pretty close when it's broken down by neighborhood. Hale 37%, Park Hill 36%, and so on and so forth. A lot of comments along the Colfax corridor, obviously, as that's the primary commercial corridor. The architecture and character was the second most liked for obvious reasons. East Area residents love the architecture and the character of these neighborhoods, particularly South Park Hill and Montclair. But because of that, they're also concerned about the erosion of that character with new development. We have a lot of information about that at the land use table in the back here. Dislikes and concerns. People appreciate that the East Area is relatively affordable, a relatively affordable part of the city, particularly as you move further east down the corridor, but also concerned that affordability is declining. This is citywide, no surprise in this neighborhood, nothing unique here. Also, respondents agree that low-income residents, disabled residents, and seniors have a more difficult time to find housing in these neighborhoods. Other concerns, food was a major concern, not looking for better quality restaurants as well as grocery stores. So access to grocery, access to restaurant. I believe up at 1 in 3 people said that access to restaurants and grocery were a big concern of theirs. And also the lack of suitable housing for low-income residents. I kind of mentioned that previously. In addition to that, looking for better support options for people with disabilities, homeless, transitional folks, people that live in the motels along the Colfax corridor. How can we look at providing services for people in need in those areas? Bicycle and pedestrian safety, this was a big one. 55% of comments on that map that I showed were related to pedestrians and sidewalks. And if you look at this map, even in the back, if you squint your eyes, you see all the darker colors here. It's red, it might look like it's black from back there. Those are areas without sidewalks. So 17% of the entire East area is lacking sidewalks, and that's compared to 9% citywide. So more than double of this neighborhood, of these 4 neighborhoods, have missing sidewalks. In East Colfax alone, 23% of the neighborhood has missing sidewalks. And any of those of you that live in East Colfax or have walked around there, it's easy to see. It's kind of mind-blowing when you walk around there, the lack of sidewalks. So based on that, more than half of the survey respondents stated that pedestrian safety is one of the key priorities of this project. A question that's come up a lot is how does this project relate to the plans for the Colfax Bus Rapid Transit? Clearly they're intertwined, there's a relationship there with Colfax being the center of our study area. But this team is actually not working on the Colfax BRT. We are working closely with the city staff, and will work closely with the consultant team that ultimately gets hired to work on the final design of that bus rapid transit. And when you talk to folks at the mobility station, you'll see some questions asking how do we better connect to the transit system on Colfax into the neighborhoods, and how do we make better transit connections to that bus rapid transit as well. I do encourage you to take a look at their website to stay on top of that schedule. But right now, last I heard, that the the project design schedule was probably going to occur later this year, so go into the more conceptual or more detailed design. Right now there's a concept plan that's been worked on over the last year or so. colfaxbrt.org is that website. So just a couple more slides from me. Growth, we've heard a lot about that. So 100,000 more people live in Denver than lived here 12 years ago. And we're looking at another 100,000 potentially in the next decade or so. So that's a big part of this plan is how do we manage that growth and how do we accommodate that growth. And this slide is just to show headlines around the country and in Denver that we're not alone with this. If anybody that pays attention to the news or reads at all, you know that cities are growing rapidly, especially cities that are desirable like our city. It's a great place to live, and people want to live here, and there's, companies are moving here, new jobs, and that brings this development pressure. So how do we manage and guide that with these through this neighborhood planning process? In the East area alone, we're looking at up to 4,800 potential housing units over the next 22 years, and then up to 3,000 jobs. And the current numbers, 16,000 housing units today, and just over 10,000 jobs today. So the important takeaway on this is that many of the decisions in this plan to accommodate this growth are going to require some trade-offs. So I mentioned earlier, talking about the character of the neighborhood. How can we create a plan and create a vision and recommendations of increasing density while also maintaining the character of our neighborhoods? So that's just one trade-off of managing growth. So next, I'm going to ask the station leaders. So we actually have 6 stations here tonight. We have a couple piggyback stations that I'll talk about in a minute here. But first I'll have my colleague Daniel talk about the economy and housing station.
Good evening, my name is Daniel. I work with JJ at Puma, and I am one of the team members staffing the economy and housing station, which is directly behind you. 4 big topics we'd like to talk to you all about tonight. First off, when it comes to economic development, one of the themes we've noticed so far is the strength of the healthcare sector in the East area. So Rose Medical is easily the largest employer in the area. National Jewish straddles the boundary along Colorado Boulevard and is also impactful. And overall, over half of all jobs in the area are in this sector. So we'd like feedback from you guys on the premise of healthcare and wellness serving as a foundation for economic growth moving forward. Second is retail. Through our surveying to date, one of the things we've heard loud and clear is that you all love your variety of small local businesses. So we'd like ideas from you on ways to ensure this remains a strength moving forward. The third is food. We'd like general ideas on what you think is needed to create what we call a complete food environment. And we can talk more about what that means at our station. And then last but not least is housing affordability. We all know this is a topic citywide. It's a topic in these neighborhoods as well. So we have some information on what we mean when we say housing affordability, and then also a voting exercise for all of you all to help us hone in on specific strategies to address this challenge. Thanks, and look forward to talking to you more.
Next is the mobility station.
Hi, I'm Ian Chase with HDR. We were brought on to help with help the city with the mobility aspect of this project. I also have with me Stephen and Ellen from the city, and our station is over here. We've got some guiding questions that we'd like you to think about as you come over to our station. We know that bicycle, pedestrian access and improvements are important. Connectivity within your neighborhood. We want you to think about how we can assist you and help you improve that. Traffic, parking, street calming, speed calming, those sorts of things we want to talk to you about. We have a vision statement, guiding principles over here that we'd like your comments on, and then a few boards with some existing conditions and some high-level concepts and ideas. So yeah, please come over. We've got plenty of opportunities for you to provide us with comments, and we've also got a little activity that we'd like you to partake in if you could fill this out as well. So look forward to talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. I just wanted to mention that all of these stations have some activities, so it's not just boards and information to look at. Some have voting exercises, some have surveys. So we do encourage you to participate in these. Cheney.
Hi everyone, my name's Cheney. I'll be leading the land use and design station in the back corner with the LU on the posters. Tonight we are asking a couple questions. Number one, JJ talked about growth. Where should growth go in these neighborhoods? It's coming regardless. So where should we put the additional housing units and things like that? What are some of your ideas for your neighborhood, big ideas, little ideas? We want to hear all that. Land use, what do you like, not like, what would you like to see more of in your neighborhood? And then we have some boards behind the maps on the table are boards about Colfax. Because Colfax is so important and the spine that kind of ties all of these neighborhoods together, we are asking about existing zoning and heights. Is it appropriate the way it is now? Would you change anything? Adaptive reuse of structures, the character defining structures, buildings on Colfax. Do you think there should be policy around perhaps saving some of those? And then for new development, what are your priorities along Colfax? For the neighborhood meetings, I encourage you to come back or go online because we have a lot more neighborhood-specific questions for land use related to design character for new development. How is new development fitting in with the character of your neighborhood or not? So we have a lot of those questions. Come back to your neighborhood meeting or participate online if you can't make it for those. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheney. Next, we have the quality of life infrastructure. What is that, you might ask?
Right, who doesn't want quality of life? So our station is over here across this wall, and we have parks, open space, recreational opportunities, generally speaking, healthy living concepts, okay? So we had heard at some previous meetings ideas about the parkways being used for pedestrian and perhaps even bicycles, making a connected link through our neighborhood. We'd love to hear if you think that's a good idea or bad idea. We have a lot of great tree canopy throughout our neighborhoods in the east area. How do we maintain that? How do we keep that healthy? Are there other ideas we should be thinking about with regard to tree canopy or green street treatments? What's our water quality? How do we manage that? And so those are the kinds of things you'll see over here. We'd love to hear from you on parks and recreational ideas.
So we have a couple of bonus stations tonight. So as I mentioned earlier, how we've been piggybacking on some meetings. So tonight we have some guests from Denver Urban Renewal Authority and then the Quebec Street project. Since those projects, there are ongoing projects with those that overlap our neighborhood plan. So we thought it would be a great opportunity to hear about them. So Tracy.
Good evening, my name is Tracy Huggins. I'm the Executive Director of the Denver Urban Renewal Authority. And I couldn't help but think as the earlier conversations were occurring, you know the children's song, one of these things is not like the other? That's us. We are not a city agency. We are not a consulting group. We are the city's redevelopment agency, though, the Urban Renewal Authority, and we are here tonight to be able to introduce the work that we are looking to do, and that involves creating an urban renewal area along a portion of East Colfax that would go from Monaco to Yosemite. I really wish we would have had the opportunity to see some of your presentation earlier before tonight, but if you think back to the slide that had the high concentration of the dark red dots, that's really where our areas are intended to be focused as well. So just wanted to give an update on what we have done so far and what our future looks like. With any hope for outcome tonight, we are more than happy to answer any questions that you have of us. but I would encourage myself and my team who are here to actually go to all of these stations, because that really is the foundation of what we, as we work with the city to create the urban renewal area, need to be better understanding what are the types of changes and improvements that you are most interested in having the tool that we can bring forward, which is a financing tool, to help deliver. So just very, very quickly, I'm sure you can't see on this slide, and please forgive me for that, but there is a boundary outline that runs from Monaco on the west to Yosemite on the far east, and it kind of zigs and zags around, and that is representative of the Main Street zoning along that portion of East Colfax. That is the area that we have undertaken a conditions or a blight study, which is an evidentiary document that we have to be able to present to City Council in order for them to determine that an area is blighted per definition of the statute and therefore eligible for urban renewal assistance. One question that we get all the time is, well, we understand TIF, what are you doing about eminent domain? We are not going to ask City Council to allow us to use the ability to acquire the property via eminent domain. So that is just not in the plan at all. But what we would look to do is to set an urban renewal area, but not set a tax increment area, but instead wait and see what type of projects might emerge once this process continues to conclude, consistent with the outcomes that each of these neighborhoods, because we touch every neighborhood except for Hale. I think you're not part of the study area. Again, really being able to be that implementing tool to work with the city, to work with the community, to help support the type of development that is going to be further identified as this process continues. So we will be here to answer questions. I have to put in a plug for our housing programs. That's why you're going to see, how can we help with home repairs? We are happy to talk about not only our more traditional urban renewal activities, but the affordable housing rehab programs that we offer as well. So as you make your way around, don't hesitate to stop over and talk to us. But like I said, we may be listening and visiting the stations just as much as you are this evening. Thanks.
Thanks, Tracy. I might talk to you about my 100-year-old house with single-pane windows. It's been really cold lately. And last but not least, we have a representative from the Quebec Corridor.
Good evening, my name is Brian Pinkerton. I'm with the City of Denver Public Works. The city has been struggling with what to do with Quebec from 6th to 26th for a long, long time. And many of you are probably aware of that, having been through some of the studies with us. We embarked on an environmental assessment, which is a federal process to study options about a little less than 2 years ago. As we got into the evaluation and gathering the data, we realized that impacts may be greater than what we had assumed they would be, and the costs may be higher than what we had assumed they would be. So we paused that process so that we could hitch our wagon to this process, get your input, and redetermine a direction for Quebec if we were on track or if we need to go with a different direction. We do have some funding available for Quebec improvements, and so we need to try to line that funding up with kind of a new direction that's established with your input. So please come over and talk with us. We know there are many, many issues on Quebec. Again, I don't need to tell that to anybody in this room in terms of traffic congestion, spillover traffic into the neighborhoods, lack of sidewalks, transit that is, it's there, but it doesn't function as well as I think many of us would like, etc. So please come over and talk to us.
Thank you, Brian. So as I mentioned, all the exercises you see tonight, with the exception of Quebec and Dura, because they're an add-on here, everything related to the East Area Plan will have online. All these boards will be online. So again, denvergov.org/eastplan. The presentation, one moment, the presentation will be there. Yeah, you have a question about the website?
I have a question about the East Area definition, but why don't you finish talking about the website?
Okay. And lastly, you'll see there's a camera here. I don't think we're doing any video tonight, but some of us will be taking photographs, and these sometimes end up on the website. So if you don't want your photograph taken, you see, it'll be me predominantly walking around taking pictures. We use these just to try to get people to meetings. If you don't want to be in a picture that you want posted, just tell me nicely or raise your hand when you see our camera. So that's all. I actually wanted to get a show of hands of folks from the steering committee. We didn't get that have volunteered their time over the last year and a half. So they're around the room representing every neighborhood, actually, all 4 neighborhoods. So thank you all for the time you have. Yeah, and you had asked about the boundary.
And I apologize if you addressed this before I came in.
Yeah, it was early.
You have a definition there of South Park Hill. You also have your East Colfax area, this East Area Plan. I live in Park Hill, Greater Park Hill. Park Hill is one neighborhood. It's Northeast Park Hill, North Park Hill, South Park Hill, and that includes a lot of the area that you've marked off.
Yeah, so I'll address that.
We had one neighborhood plan, and I think you're going to get, I hope you're going to be doing the same thing.
Yes, there will be a North ParkLl plan. So these,
No, that's not the question.
These neighborhoods
it was a Park Hill plan for
correct.
all 3 neighborhoods because we're one neighborhood.
It was that, yeah, but that's not what the new plan is.
Okay, you're going to make it some pushback from residents because we have been one neighborhood and we've worked very hard for decades to be one neighborhood.
Right, so these neighborhoods are statistical neighborhoods that those boundaries were set in 1978 and those have been used since then for the statistical neighborhood. So there's in no means is this plan trying to create a new neighborhood. That's just how the government statistics work for this neighborhood, and that goes for Hale, Montclair, and East Colfax. So when the North Park Hill neighborhood plan comes to fruition, then that plan will work with the recommendations of this plan, and there'll be a public process through that. So now we're going to open up into the breakout station. So I think, no clock here, I think we have about just under an hour and a half. So we're not telling you to spend this amount of time at each station. We want you to self-regulate, go to the station that you're most interested in, and if you see a station that's really busy, go to another station. I think based on the number of people here and the number of team members we have around the room, it shouldn't be a problem, but we encourage you to go to these stations, go to the website. We have that comment and questionnaire. We definitely read these recommendations on the meeting format. There's a few questions on the back of that handout on the meeting format. We ask you to fill that out too as well. Okay, with that, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the evening.